Have you ever made a plan you're proud of and then just watched as everything went wrong? Even the best planners know that we can't make a perfect plan. Life is going to constantly throw curveballs, and the best thing we can do is have a mindset to be resilient and push our way through. Today I'm talking with an expert who did this for himself and who has a framework to help create a mindset for resilience. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Escape the Clock. I'm your host, the author of the book, and I'm here to help you with strategies for your long-term financial freedom. Today, we're exploring a reality that touches everyone. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or a retiree, your financial plan will be tested. From stock market crashes and layoffs to unexpected medical bills or global events like COVID, the ability to prepare, adapt, and bounce back financially is what separates those who thrive from those who struggle. Here's a sobering stat. The Federal Reserve reports that nearly 40% of Americans would struggle to cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing or selling something. That lack of preparation leaves millions financially vulnerable. But it doesn't have to be that way. The act of planning ahead means we can spot risks and develop contingencies for when things might go wrong. Being comfortable with discomfort means we can grow and adapt, making the next round better. The most prepared understand that even when the best plans go wrong, but with the right mindset, you can thrive ahead no matter what. And that's what we're going to focus on today with the help of a special guest who has cracked that code. Kelvin Abrams is an entrepreneur and the author of Get Uncomfortable or Change Course. Kelvin has lived through financial crises, adapted, and built resilience. And now he teaches how anyone can use the right mindsets and tools to strengthen our plans. Kelvin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm really excited to talk to you today. Your book is really great. I want to just kick things off by asking you to talk a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you got to where you are now.
Awesome. Well, let's see who I am. I have three small businesses here in Western Howard County, Maryland, where we're located. I started my journey, I guess I would say, when I was a child. I knew at the very young age that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I would do things like sell my toys out of my window, sell candy and soda from school. So I kind of knew I was going to be an entrepreneur at a very, very young age. And it didn't help that my dad was an entrepreneur as well, too. So yeah, I just kind of in school, I kind of knew that there was something inside of me. I graduated from Rutgers University and I had a short stint working as a federal investigator, but it really wasn't my calling. My calling was to be an entrepreneur. So in 2007, I started my first business, Tiki's Playhouse, and I started it because I lost my dog, and his name was Tiki. I'm a New York Giants football fan, so I've named all my dogs after football players. So he died. I took it kind of hard, and I literally had been working on the business plans in college, and I just kind of sat it to the side. And after my dog died, I really decided that now is the time for me to start my business. And from 2007 to now, here I am. I didn't think I would have three businesses. I didn't think I'd have a bar. I didn't think I'd ever own a gym. I knew I was going to write a book at the age of 18. I knew I was going to write a book. I just didn't know what it was about. So my journey is a long journey, but I'm finally here.
Wow. It definitely strikes me how your success started with being in a very vulnerable and difficult place. I think a lot of that is like very character defining moments in our lives that define like how do we handle these moments. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about your mindset back then and now. And do you think you were born with that kind of mindset, or is this something like skills you've been developing?
A great question. I usually tell people my humble opinion is entrepreneurs are born, they're not made. And again, that's just my humble opinion. Because at a very young age, again, I knew I had something in me. I knew I was going to I was very creative as a young kid. And that's probably what got me in trouble in school, being so creative. But yeah, so I think entrepreneurs are born. And it is a mindset that you have to have. And growing up, we had an average child life, but towards the last couple of years in high school, it was a little rough for us, family financially. Again, my dad started a business. And of course, when you start businesses, the first 3 to 5 years are the toughest time. And, having a young family at that time is difficult for us. So I think my my understanding of being an entrepreneur started probably when I was in a junior or senior year in high school because I saw what we had to sacrifice. I saw what my dad sacrificed, and I saw what my family sacrificed for the commitment of my father having a being self-employed. So I just kind of grew up with that mindset. And then in college, I struggled throughout college, working several jobs. So the discipline came with that, meaning that, I had to pay for school somehow. And so I worked 3 and 4 jobs. So I've always had that mentality of a hustler mentality. And I think that's what an entrepreneur truly is a hustler.
That's fascinating. I think you and I have a lot of similarities, I think, and kind of our I guess, backstory there. My father was also an entrepreneur. He was trying to create a video rental store before that was a thing. He had Beta, Max, and then eventually VHS, which was like a breaking thing back when he was doing this. But of course, like chain video stores came in and then he struggled and he ended up with a bankruptcy and he had put everything into that. And so that really changed his course and it really put us into a financial difficulty for decades, to be honest. For me, I also was working multiple jobs and hustling and trying to get it, and I did really well. Now I'm trying to help others by teaching some of the skills that work for me. How much of you say, kind of being born into the entrepreneurial spirit, but how much of some of these skills that you have you found are translatable?
I would probably say more than half, more than half. Just because, again, when you see it, when you grow up around it, when you hear it, when you feel it, it resonates with you. And when I say when you see it, hear it, and feel it, I mean when you feel it in your stomach, you're hungry, you have no food, you feel it, you relate to it. When you see it, when you see that the bills are coming in, and you see that the red envelopes or the pink envelopes saying that your account is past due, and when you see the lights getting cut off and the telephone bill getting cut off because there's no money, all of that stuff resonates with you, and as a young adult going into college, that was a difficult part for me because, being a young adult, having to deal with that emotionally was a struggle. But I think that also cemented who I am today is because if I can deal with those troubles at that young age, then there is nothing that I can't resolve or deal with.
I think in a weird way, our struggles allowed us to be successful. It's kind of, to be honest, I think a lot of what you were saying, these things do imprint on you. And then you end up in a mindset where you just don't, you need to get away from that. Right. And so it kind of forces that hustle. At least that was the way it worked for me. I kind of hear a little bit of that coming from your story. But a lot of people do struggle, right? Nearly 60% of US adults are living paycheck to paycheck. That's a lot of people just making it by every day. Why do you think it's so hard for the majority of people to kind of plan ahead?
I just think there are a lot of pitfalls that come into your life. I mean, everyone who starts a business think that they have the best, perfect business plan. It's not going to fail. They think they've done all the work, but it's the unknown that is frightful for people. It's the unknown, and I think that's why a lot of people's fail is because when it gets really hard, that's the time people turn away, and they shouldn't turn away. But when it gets really hard, that's the time you dig deep. When you ask any successful athlete, whether it be Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, whoever it may be, Serena Williams, whoever it may be at the top of their game, they're going to tell you when it's really tough, that's when you dig deep and that's when you have to show who you are. And I think that's why about 60% of people may have financial problems and so forth, is because when it gets really difficult, people turn away and they walk away. Entrepreneurs don't. Entrepreneurs see it as a challenge.
I definitely want to dive really deep into some of the mindset pieces that you're touching on, and I will get into that more. But first, when in your book you talk about having a plan and these aspects of a plan, and actually, I truly believe I was a professional planner for a lot of my career, and I noticed they were hiring me to come in and just create something to align everyone with, because without that, without a playbook, if you will, it's kind of chaotic. It's just like a lot of ambiguity and struggle. And when I talk to people about their financial situations, I notice there is a lack of planning in people's lives. They have a general sense of maybe their dreams, but not always where they are financially and where they're trying to go. So do you think is this a lack of planning in your mind, or is it just the mindset piece?
I don't think it's a lack of planning. I just think that there are things that happen day to day as an entrepreneur, whether it be just a normal person. trying to plan their financial future. I just think things come up here and there. And so, sure, some of it could be lack of planning and preparing, but I mean, all of us plan and prepare. It's just to what extent do we plan and prepare? I mean, we all have bank accounts. We all say we have 401ks. We all put money away, but we don't anticipate the stock market crash. We don't anticipate things happening. We don't anticipate, this whole Bitcoin revolution or cryptocurrency revolution that everyone's taking. So we can't adapt to those things. It's just life. It just happens. So I think the best financial planner is basically to have a plan B, have a plan C, and have a plan D because, ultimately your plans are going to fail. And that's just part of success. And that's part of life. Failure is success. And that's what I like to tell people is failure is success. So if you have financial failure, don't worry about it. Just get back up and keep going.
I couldn't agree with that more. Having done it professionally, you have to have a backup plan because everything does fail. And there is
Absolutely.
no plan I've ever seen in 20 years that when it was signed off on is what happened. Like it just never happened. Like you have to adapt it. You have to figure out. And, so Fidelity had collected some data and they showed that people who consistently save 15% of their income are going to be completely fine in retirement, but most Americans save less than 8%. So I kind of see like there's a mindset issue a lot of the time. Like we know we're supposed to save, but it's hard to save and it's easier to spend and things like this. And I think mindset is a lot of it, and how we adapt and think about our future based on our plans is kind of key. So how do you think about that and financial resilience in particular? Do you think these are mindset issues in the beginning and need to get past that if they're going to have any chance for success?
No, I actually think that a lot of it has to relate to your childhood. I hate to sound like I'm a psychologist or psychoanalyst here, but I think if you grow up in a stable environment and you grow up in an environment where you're taught to keep 15% and you're taught to put that aside, I think you just grow up that way. Just like with me, I grew up being an entrepreneur because my father was an entrepreneur. So I think at a young age, we're taught these things. And if we're not taught, for example, if at a young age, if you're not taught to brush your teeth every day, when you go to college and you're a young adult in college, you're going to have cavities, right? But if your parents instill upon you, hey, brush your teeth every day, floss your teeth every day, and as you grow up as an adult, you're going to have what? Good teeth and good manners because your parents taught you that. So I think a lot of that comes from your upbringing. And then also economics, depending on where you are. And depending on your situation, not a lot of people can save 15%. And then again, if you have children or if there's other things that come up, education, if you're a single mom, single dad, or if you're struggling, so I think a lot of that has to play with it. But most of it, I think, comes from your childhood.
Was money talked about in your home when you were growing up?
Money was talked about, but it was talked about in a negative way, in the sense of, hey, you didn't pay this bill. This light went, the light got cut off. And again, that wasn't my entire childhood. We were an average family, middle class family, but it was towards the end of my junior year, senior year, again, when my dad really started his business that. That's what I remember. I don't remember all the good times. Unfortunately, it's like when you have trauma in your life, you remember that trauma and you don't remember all the good times. So I do remember some good times, but for the most part, what stuck with me was the trouble. What stuck with me was the financial hardship. And what stuck with me was what I'm not going to do it as an adult and what I'm not going to do to my family if and when I have a family. So that's what stuck with me most. And that's what gave me my drive and continues to give me my drive.
So you think seeing your father's entrepreneurial spirit and also what happens when you're having all those life experiences that are so negative financially, that kind of came together for you and kind of put you in a position to succeed?
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of that was fuel to the fire. It just was like, hey, I'm not going to be like him. I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to do that. I lived it as a young kid. I was forced to live it as a young kid. Not that I wanted to, but when I look at it now as a middle-aged adult here, I sit back and say, that was a good learning for me. It was a good learning process for me. Had I wished it been different? Of course. But, now as an adult, now as an entrepreneur, now as an author, I sit back and say, these are some valuable lessons that I learned as a child. I was forced to learn. And today, I think it makes me who I am today.
So 90% of wealth is lost by the third generation. So as we pass it on to our children and then our children's children, a lot of the values that we take on are completely not passed down. It's kind of like a game of telephone, and a lot of the wealth ends up getting squandered. So I do see even situations where people grow up comfortable in a wealthy situation. That doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, for them. So there is something there about how we're raised, our home, our values, and how we translate that to success in life. In your book, you had this framework, the earn, return framework you talked about. I like that a lot because I think part of what we need to do when we're working forward is always one, we have to plan, because if we're not thinking ahead, what are we doing? We're just it's just random. But we need to be looking for feedback. We need to say, did this work or did this not work? And in measuring something makes a big difference. That's why I always talk about smart goals and having some idea. Did my strategy get me closer to my goal or not? And so in your life, how did you come up with that? And at what point did you see this is something I could teach or write about?
That's a good question. I want to say, again, at 18, I knew I had something in me to share. And I think I had something in me to share because that was a difficult time. Again, I mentioned my junior year and senior year in high school were difficult times for me. We went through a lot of financial hardships and so that at that time, um, I had something to share and I just didn't know what it was. And it came out of me during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, as I faced more struggles and financial hardship, I think it came out of me. And that's where the learn, earn, return came from, is the fact that, I think my job here on earth is to learn as much as I can learn from the past, learn from the present, and learn from the future. And then another portion of it is to earn. And my job is to try to earn as much skills, as much financial wealth as I can, just as much knowledge as I can, and then return and to give it back to people. I am here today because I didn't do it alone. I have several people to thank for being in my corner to this day, still mentors, business mentors, bankers, marketing reps. So family, friends to this day that have helped me get to where I am. I'm a true believer in return, giving back. It's one of those things where you say pay it forward, so I'm a true believer of paying it forward. And then not only that, I did have a tough time in college and after college and so forth. And so, I just think at this point in time in my life, I just want to give back and help people and help people prevent the same young and dumb mistakes that I've made and see if I can just help someone thrive.
I love that a lot because I truly believe if we're going to get out of these financial crises that we're in, we need to help each other. There's a lot of systemic issues that hold us back, and we have to teach. And there's not a lot of financial literacy. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That made an impression on me because a lot of times you hear about people say strategies and measure returns, but they don't talk about the giving back part. So I think that's a powerful thing, and I really think that you created a nice framework there. When you work with people with this, and you're telling people, hey, this is what worked for me. Here's a framework for you. Do you like one thing I noticed is there's a lot of fear in trying new things. And it's come from your childhood, like we talked about, right? Like I was told investing in the stock market's bad. You shouldn't do that. How is that framework how you imagine people can come past it, or is there some other way to get past those mindsets?
I just think that someone needs a mentor. Someone needs to have someone that has been there. And what has worked for me in the last 5 or 6 years is I have a really good friend slash mentor who has lived and walked in my shoes. And I think what can help people get out of any mindset that they're stuck in is to find someone that has been there, find someone who understands where you are at that particular time in your life, and to find someone who says you are exactly where you're supposed to be at this point in time in your life. And I'm blessed to have that. I have a great mentor. He's 75 years old and he's still running his business to this day, and he's a self-made man, but he had his financial hardships and almost filed bankruptcy for him and his family, but luckily he hung in there, and today he's a self-made man. He's doing really well. And I listen to him. I don't listen to everything he says, but I really listen to his experience, his know-how, because again, he's been there and I'm trying to get to where he is. So it's like that roadmap. It's like you're going to follow a roadmap for the directions if you're trying to go somewhere you haven't been to. You're not going to just get in a car and drive. You have to have a roadmap. And he's my roadmap. So I listen to him and I follow everything that he's not everything, but I follow a lot of what he suggests because again, he's walked in my shoes.
That's great. I can tell you, having built all these plans for these companies, like you can't do it on your own. Like
No.
no one sits in a room by themselves and figures out the plan that works. You have to go collaborate with people and talk to people, learn from people. You have to look at the past, what didn't work. You have to be able to I look at other people's guts because your gut's going to work in some way, but you have blind spots. So I do think that's really powerful, and having mentors can help you. One thing that I teach, and I have in my book, is how to make the plan. How do you get build to put the pieces together, take all the strategies, so you have something you can review with somebody. Because if you can't show your plan to someone, how are you going to, quickly get feedback on what might work or not and get those learnings when you with your mentor, or even when you're mentoring somebody? How do you typically do it? Is it through just conversation? Do you typically like to have people write stuff down? How do you help people find their blind spots?
So that's really good. My mentor suggested this is that whenever I do talk to people, I like to give them a piece of paper and it has a couple of different questions on there, right? Which is like, where do you see yourself in a month? Where do you see yourself in, a year, what have you? What are your goals? What's your why, et cetera? And so I have them write that down on a piece of paper and, we discuss it when I'm talking to them. We'll discuss it and they'll ask questions. And then I take the piece of paper and I have them fill out an envelope. And on the envelope, they put their address and all that stuff. And I tell them 30 days from now, I'm going to send it to you and I want to know where you are. So that's accountability for me. So I take that from them and I let them know that I'm going to hold you accountable in the next 30 days or 60 days. I want you to try to achieve your goals. So I talk to them about that, number one. Number two, I always talk to them about going to a SCORE representative. Small Business Administration has an organization called SCORE. And I talk to them about that because that's also a roadmap. That's also accountability. That's also someone who's been there before, who's a coach and who wants to help and to put someone on the right path. So, it's a lot of people and it's a lot of organizations and it's a lot of different moving parts that someone has to adapt to when they're trying to plan, their future, when they're trying to plan this business opportunity that they're looking for.
Oh, that's great. I like that. Yeah, especially if everyone had that place they know to go and get that final review, I could see how powerful that would be. So that's cool that you do that. Imagine you're helping me right now, and we get a plan put together. Things are going to go wrong. Something's going to go wrong. And at some point, that person's, you can call it hardwired behaviors or whatever, something will kick in and some panic might happen. There was a Vanguard study that showed that investors who pull out early from a downturn will end up actually with 2% less returns annually compared to those who just ride it out. So there is a real cost to reacting and panicking. Mindset's such a big part of what you talk about, and being okay, being uncomfortable. How do you help people actually do that?
So first of all, I try to prevent people from being entrepreneurs. First thing I usually tell people is don't do it. And they're like, why? And I'm like, unless you're willing to go through and sacrifice and go through the ups and downs, don't do it. And that's why I called the book Get Uncomfortable or Change Course, because I truly believe being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. Because there are some scary days, scary times, And so, how do I tell people to deal with it? I tell them if it's for you, you'll know it, and if it's not for you, you'll go get a 9 to 5 job. But the thing is I think the only way to truly, truly know it and to truly, truly help somebody is to share your experiences with them. And that's what I do in my book. And that's what I like to do when I'm talking to people in person is I share my struggles. I'm proud of my struggles. I share my financial difficulties and I share my issues with people not as a badge of pride or a badge of, honor, but I share it with them to really scare their pants out of them and just let them know that, hey, look, if you want to go down this road, yes, it's very rewarding, but it's not easy. It's a dark road. It's a long road you're going to be traveling. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And my mentor always says to me, you make your own good luck. And I always end with that is that you make your own good luck. However that may be or whatever that may mean to you or to the person is you make your own good luck. And that's being an entrepreneur. You put yourself in the right place. You always look for an opportunity.
This is probably similar for you as an entrepreneur, but as a program manager, we used to call it firefighting, because every day
Put
some
down
dealing
fires.
with some fire. Like there, it's like, okay, my job is to show up and just deal with whatever problem was. It could be a people problem, an organizational problem, an industry problem. Like it doesn't matter.
Put
You
down
just dealt with
fires.
it, and you had to be very okay with leading through that discomfort of whatever that thing happened to be, which could push you into an area that you've never even been in before. Do you think this is a little bit of a sink or swim type of thing? I guess is what I'm getting at. You said it's not for everyone. I get that. But those who realize, hey, no, I'm committed. I'm okay. I'll be just uncomfortable, but I need to be able to get through this. Is it just, okay, just be ready. You're going to go through some crap, but you can get through it as long as you don't give up? Or do you think there's some more skills involved in that?
You just have to be willing to fail. And I've always told people, from a very young age, is I'm not afraid to fail. I've failed before. I've failed in sports. I've failed in relationships. I've failed in friendships. I failed in my classes and grades and things like that. So I'm used to failing. The thing that I won't do is I won't get up off the canvas. And the thing I won't do is I won't not try. When I go to heaven one day, I want God to look at me and say, hey, you did a great job. I don't want God to look at me and say, why didn't you take advantage of the many opportunities that I presented in front of you? So I'd rather go knowing that I've exhausted everything and tried everything. And I think an entrepreneur knows that. So the pandemic of 2020 and then the 2018 housing crash, those are examples of me surviving, and not just me, other entrepreneurs surviving, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And plenty of people during the pandemic of 2020 closed their businesses and just said the hell with it and walked away with it. Me, I looked at it as a challenge and said, you're not going to take this from me. If anyone is going to take it from me, it's going to be me, or it's going to be God. I'm not going to let the pandemic take it from me. I've worked too hard. So you just have to have that resiliency about you that you're never going to give up.
Yeah, that's the word, right? Resilience. Yeah, and I do think that's the key here. You can make the best plan in the world. You can have the best support in the world. Ultimately, though, there will be this moment where you're tested, and are you going to walk away? Or are you going to try a different angle? So let me ask you this, because I think a lot of what I ended up learning, one of the best ways I can make sure a plan was successful in my professional career and also my financial plan was to be a risk manager. And what I mean by risk manager is I was someone who was always thinking about where things could go wrong
Mhm.
and what possible contingencies could I be ready with so that when they go wrong, I'm not freezing up, right? And doing something just I regret. Can you talk a little bit about things like you've done in your life or things you think people could do in general to help kind of bulletproof their plans a little bit more and kind of manage these things before they go wrong?
Well, there is no bulletproof vest for that. I mean, it's just you just prepare as much as you can, and it happens to me all the time. Over the last 17 years of being an entrepreneur, I've started businesses and they've failed. I've had other businesses that have been successful. So I think the only thing you really can do is try to collaborate with as many people that have been there with you. I'm not talking your family or your friends. No, I'm talking professional people. Like I remember early on, my friends and family would say, "Why are you hiring people to do these things? I can help you. I can help you." And I was very resistant upon it. And I said, no, I'd rather hire somebody who this is what they do 40 hours or 80 hours a week versus a family or friend trying to save me a nickel or a dime. It doesn't work that way. And so when I tell people, when you put your business plan together, it's not something that you're going to half-ass. If you half-ass your business plan, then your business is going to be half-ass. So what I look at it is before I do something, I consult with many people. I have many advisors that I consult with that are professionals, including my bookkeeper, my CPA, my marketing guy, my attorney, all of which are self-employed people. So the people on my team are all self-employed and they, are business owners like myself, and they can understand where I'm at. So I think the only full bulletproof plan is to get as many eyes on your business plan, as many eyes on your financial plans as possible. Because again, it goes back to the old saying is that it takes a village to raise a family. So, it takes a village to have a successful business plan, a financial plan. It takes consulting with others.
Okay, so correct me if I got this wrong, but it sounded a bit like stress testing. So
Yes.
taking it through as many eyes as you can, right? Because people have different expertise. I definitely do that. I talk to my CPA about certain moves. I do
Absolutely.
have a financial advisor. I definitely have thoughts on how you select these people. You have to be very careful. You have to understand they have your best interest in mind. You have to understand how people get paid. You have to select them with the right intent in mind. But that stress testing is kind of key because I can say, like, when it comes to a good financial plan, diversification can make a big difference. Maybe
Absolutely.
you're not thinking about how to diversify something well. You can think about security versus growth and what your risk tolerance and also your risk capacity. I can afford to lose X amount because I'm at this age, or I have multiple income sources. I feel like there's certain things you might miss if you're not getting the right eyes on it to help kind of challenge where to go. Did I kind of get that right?
Absolutely. It's all about, calculated risk is like I'd say, is it's all about the risk. I mean, I take risks every single day. People that dabble in the stock market. I got a friend of mine that dabbles in the stock market and has made a couple million from it. And good for you. It's a calculated risk that you take. And my calculated risk is being an entrepreneur is like you said, putting out fires. I'm the chief firefighter here at my business, and every day I'm putting out a fire, and every day I'm making calculated risk and calculated moves. And do I make mistakes? Absolutely. But you know what? The thing is, I get up off the canvas and I try again.
Awesome. Let me just ask one more question. What would you say to someone who's listening to this and wondering how to get that mindset, how to get their plans in a better place and make their way through uncertainty? Do you have like one key piece of advice you typically tell people?
For me, what I do is I like to refer to this as I go to the boardroom. And the boardroom for me is where I sit and I think, I consult with other people. I listen to music, inspirational music. I read scriptures from the Bible. I have quotes all over my room, on my wall, and things like that. I read motivational books, like one is a David Goggins, love David Goggins. He's got this book that says, "You Can't Hurt Me." And so I read books like that inspire me because people, there are a lot of books out there and a lot of people out there that have stories that are far worse than mine, and I thrive from that. So what I would tell people is to get your inner strength and to get your confidence from reading and learning from other people that have been there and who have struggled and succeeded. I mean, you can go from every athlete to any uh, uh, actor or actress. I mean, everyone has struggles, where they've slept in their car, but now they're billionaire in Hollywood. So it's like learn from other people's mistake, but also know that it could be you one day and just use that as fuel on the fire, like I do every day.
Thank you so much, Kelvin. I really appreciate you coming here, sharing your wisdom, your experiences. Can you tell listeners how they're able to connect with you and your book?
Sure. The book is called Get Uncomfortable or Change Course. I have a website, kelvinabrams.com. And yeah, that's basically how you can find me. But more importantly, get uncomfortable or change course. That's most important thing is either get used to it or go get a 9 to 5.
Right on. Love it. Awesome. That'll all be in the show notes as well. Thank you again, Kelvin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
During my conversation with Kelvin, it really reemphasized to me that there is no perfect plan, just strong mindsets. When I was thinking back to my time as a program manager, we'd labor away trying to make the perfect plan, locked away for weeks, toiling to capture every detail we could, all to align everyone on some far off objective. We'd review it and refine it, review it and refine it over and over, and eventually get the coveted stamp of approval, only to watch the plan become outdated the very next day. As soon as you start executing a plan, you learn something new. It's hard to make a plan when everything is constantly changing. There's just so much outside of our control. Life humbles us and forces us to either adapt or fail. Speaking with Kelvin, it was clear he understood this. From how he was raised to the tough lessons he learned in life, he did the best he could, often using his father's example as a guide for what not to do. But things still went wrong, things outside of his control, things he wasn't at fault for. Collecting capital to start businesses takes a lot of planning and grit, and most people aren't confidently predicting a housing market collapse or a pandemic that shuts down the world. These aren't normal contingencies, but moments like that test us. and they show our character through the resilience of finding a new path forward. We can all do this in our financial plans. We will be tested when it comes to our financial lives and our life goals overall. Luck and means can increase the odds of succeeding, but listening to Kelvin, there's more to it than that. Having the right mindset, one where you're okay being uncomfortable, and know you're going to dig in when it gets hard. That's the difference between succeeding and failing for good. He gave a lot of practical advice to achieve this mindset. First, find your quiet place to do your best thinking. This quote-unquote boardroom is where you can focus and find inspiration to plan ahead and develop contingencies. Still, no plan can be bulletproof. So putting some smart fail-safes in place is important. Insurance coverages, backup plans, diversification, these are very smart things that can make any financial plan more resilient. But it's the backup planning. That can be the difference between a setback and a disaster. Those plan Bs, plan Cs, and so on, those are the things that allow us to stay in our rational minds when life checks us and triggers our emotional side. Having the forethought to think ahead gives you a better way to adapt. All said and done, there's no single right plan. Even if plan C is the one that eventually gets you there, it wasn't the right plan from the start. The right plan is the one that's adapted in the moment, constantly personalized to your needs as the new information comes in. Each learning makes us better at the next plan we make. Kelvin also reminded us that we can't do it all on our own. Having a resilient mindset isn't enough. They're blind spots. But with the help of others, we can shine a light on those things that might hurt us. Surrounding yourself with mentors and teachers, ideally people who've been through what you're trying to accomplish, that's how we shore up our plans and fill those gaps. When things go right, we're learning, then earning, and that enables us to return some of that back. Give it back to the people who helped us. Give it back to people in need. No plan is made in isolation. We always do better together. So when you're making your plan, you can do all the right things, but until you have a plan written down that you can review with experts, your CPA, your financial planner, your partner, then you're just sitting with an incomplete picture. Because things will go wrong. And when they do, it's uncomfortable and you may want to quit. But remember what Kelvin said. Being uncomfortable is when we dig in and push ahead. Being okay with failing means we can keep going with those backup plans because our goals are more important than whatever issue just knocked us back. If all goes well, we'll continue to get ahead and we'll be in better position to help others. As always, I want to hear from you. What are some of the things you're doing to make your plans more resilient? Thanks for listening, and best of luck preparing your financial plan to weather any storm and escaping the clock. I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember, while I'm not yet a financial planner, I am getting my degree in wealth management. You should take anything you've heard here as tips and advice to making your plan. To learn more, visit www.escapetheclock.com. There, you can find the book, resources, including the planner, and you can even schedule time with me. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.